Final segment here talking about attendance. Attendance is up. And look at there's several reasons why I think. I think the fact that you're seeing a lot of teams are still in it. A lot of teams are playing competitive ball. We're going into the summer saying, "Hey, do we have a shot?" Even some of the teams with lousy records, there's a reason to go there. But
Mhm.
I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that. Tell me why you think attendance is up this year. I'll tell you why I think attendance is up.
Well, I think it's really simple. I think it's just the new rules, right? I just think when you have the faster pace of play, people don't feel like they're going to be dragged. And listen, some people love being at the ballpark all day. I love baseball. That's why I do this baseball podcast 5 days a week. But personally, I don't want to be at the ballpark 5 hours every day. So I kind of like the fact that sometimes you have to, these games are kind of in and out and you're there for 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And the pace of it, you can't turn your head away from the action, which is just so different. And then you got the faster pace of play with the pitch clock. You also just have better pace of play with some of the new rules with the pickoff attempts and the banning of the infield shift. I just think the new rules have just led to an influx of just more people being aware of the game, knowing these games are quicker, and the idea of going to a ballpark doesn't have to take all day, doesn't have to take all your time anymore. I just think that's really enticing to people because I don't think people want sporting events to be an all day thing. People love going to these things. A D-backs game, a baseball game, they're on every day. It should just be a leisurely activity. You know what? I want to go after work. I want to go hit a 7 o'clock, 6:40 baseball game, but I don't want to be there till midnight. Now I could go at 6:40 and still be home by 9 o'clock. It's a beautiful feeling as a sports fan. I just think the new rules with how quickly these games are flying by and just the action always feel like something's going on with offense being up across the board. There was 3 true outcomes, the strikeouts, walks, and home runs. Things that start to even out a little bit. We see speed back in the game with this D-backs offense, a whole bunch of other offenses. Like we just have little niche things back in the game when it comes to speed, some small ball, getting chaotic on the bases. I just feel like we're starting to watch baseball evolve before our eyes. The game's starting to translate into this new modern era, starting to move away from some of those old rules and the old pastimes and the old traditions and say, you know what, let's move into the 21st century and let's get with the times.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of games at Dodger Stadium this year, and look at I'll always go to games, but you can absolutely feel the difference. You
Yeah.
can feel like, and it's again, pace of play and time of game are not the same thing.
Hmm.
But I will tell you that I was at a game earlier this year that started around 1 o'clock uh, Pacific time, and I was at Dodger Stadium. First pitch 1 o'clock, and I was back here in my home in Pasadena at 4 o'clock. That was an entire game, plus getting to your car, getting through the Dodger Stadium traffic, driving up the 110, and getting my butt back to Pasadena. That's not a slow, that's a very slow process to go
Yeah.
through the whole parking situation at Dodger Stadium. Now, look, I'm not saying, oh, it's shorter, therefore it's better, but the pace of it is faster. The time of game is, you're right. You can actually say, hey, I'll be home in time to do something else. But so it's like, okay, going to a ball game doesn't suddenly mean I have to sacrifice my entire day. But it also is when you're there, yes, the pitch clock works beautifully. I think pitch clock is great. Get your butt in the box, get your butt on the mound. Let's get it going. But the other thing, the speed, bringing speed back to the game,
Yes.
the chain reaction of a guy gets on first base by a hit, walk, whatever. They're on first base. For a generation, it was don't you move. We're not going to steal bases because we're all jacked up on God knows what, and therefore we just want 3-run homers. And you can't get a 3-run homer if you get caught stealing second base. So just stay there. Now, when they're on there and everyone's watching, he's going. And even the chaos of a runner going, a bunt down, a ball hit on the ground while the runner is going, anything that creates chaos on the field, anything that you're also seeing, I think, there's a bigger emphasis on balls being hit into play.
Hmm.
I think people are trying to cut down on strikeouts. Because, I mean, look at it. There used to be like, well, it doesn't matter if they strike out. You'd rather they strike out than hit into a double play. True, but if you put the ball in play, they can make an error. They can find the hole. It happened. I saw it in the a game the other day when it was I forget. I think it was whoever the heck Seattle was playing.
Whoever.
But it was a great thing. It was like the runner was going, the guy hit a ground ball, and it just went to exactly where the shortstop was. It was textbook. I'll tell the other thing. I'll tell
That
the
happened
other
with the
thing.
D-backs.
Or it may have been the D-backs game. I'll tell you the other one. Banning the shift.
Yeah.
The ripple effect of banning the shift is you have more diving plays, you have more acrobatic plays. When everyone's standing exactly where the ball is going to go, ground ball here, throw to there, those aren't going to show up on ESPN. Neither are viewers these days, but that's a different story.
Oh, yeah.
But the pace of play, the pitch clock, but I think speed brings more into it because you're more involved in the game when there's always action, even in between pitches.
Yeah, and of course it's easy for me to talk about the D-backs, covering them every day, but I've seen them. That's a team I've seen take so much advantage of these new rules. Like twice this past week, a guy like Jake McCarthy or Corbin Carroll have gone on first base with one out, and what do? They steal second, they steal third, and all of a sudden you have one out, run scoring opportunity just because you got some speed on the bases. And the new rules have also added just a greater emphasis on these defensive catchers. If you got a guy with a cannon behind home plate, that is going to add so much more money in that guy's pocket and the value of that position, because the D-backs made this big trade this offseason. They traded away Dalton Varsho, right, for Gabriel Moreno. Moreno is the lead in the league in caught steal percentage. Over half the time he's throwing away base runners, and that is so huge when you're going against a team like the Atlanta Braves, who has Ronald Acuna, who already has almost 30 stolen bases. Like, teams more than ever are taking off, putting those runners, those speedsters in run scoring positions. And so you need to have great defensive catchers behind the plate. And like you said, you just need to have great defense overall, because with the banning of shifts, you can't have a sluggish guy over at shortstop. You got to be more rangy than ever. And that just goes across all defensive positions. And I don't even think the shift has been like dramatic in terms of when you're watching the game, because I still think you still see these guys moving over. Maybe it's not as dramatic as before, but you still see these guys moving over and still seeing those baby shifts work at times. And just the fact that you're seeing more balls in the holes than ever before. Like a guy like Joey Gallo actually started this season pretty hot, and I think banning of the shift was pretty good for that. So all these new rules, I mean, even the bases being bigger is not something that you necessarily notice, but it all plays into the speed. The pickoffs all play into the speed. The Major League Baseball had just done a great job of adding chaos back into the sport, because when you think about other sports, you got turnovers, right? In basketball, stolen bases, possessions can go back and forth. Same with football. Baseball doesn't have turnovers, so they needed a way to create havoc and chaos in the sport where it's like you don't know what's going to happen at any time. And adding speed back, that element, when you got to start throwing the ball all over the field, when you got a guy like Corbin Carroll on first base, Christian Walker hits a double down the line, and now your defensive outfielders have to throw that ball, get that relay in quickly because he might go from first to home. I just think speed has been the greatest addition that baseball has added to this season.
I agree. And it makes it more fun to go to the ballpark.
Yeah,
and
I love
sometimes, and also, like, there's one last thing about the time of game. The one thing I'll say about that is there's sometimes if you go to, like, you're going to see a movie and you say, oh God, that's 3.5 hours, isn't it? You got to add in parking. You got to add in the previews at the front and driving back. You're like, do I really want to spend 4.5 hours of my day watching a freaking Transformers movie?
Maybe. Transformers, maybe.
Yeah, no, okay. I'm a 51-year-old man. I'm done watching trucks turn into robots.
They got animals now, Sully.
Wow! How silly of me to think that the franchise had run out of gas.
Yeah.
But if you know that a ball game is going to fly by, and it's not going to be an all-day excursion, you know what? You're more likely to say, "Oh, I'll go see the game tonight." Well, either way, I'm going to go see you. Miller Thomas, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle, on all your streaming platforms. On YouTube, Locked On Diamondbacks on there as well. And maybe I'll start a new podcast, Locked On Transformers, for anyone who's interested, because I would love to talk about all the Michael Bay films and the new one that's coming out. I'm very interested, Sully.
I picked the wrong franchise to pick on. You
Yeah.
can follow us at Locked On MLB Pod. Send your hate email to there or to Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the mighty D-backs and Rangers. Hey, is that a World Series preview?
Ooh.
And will they be using Jacob deGrom as a secret weapon? I don't know, but the attendance will be up. This has been Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover for the 6th day of June 2023. He's Miller Thomas. I'm Sully. Let's fist pump for another week.